Welcome to the Coils, Cash and Culture Show, where we sit down with creatives and entrepreneurs at the intersection of Black hair care and business. My name is Taisha Friday, and I'll be your host. After researching the Black hair care economy, I learned in some countries, Black consumers can spend up to 9 times more than their non-Black counterparts on hair care. Despite this unwavering demand, there is still room for innovation in the quality of goods and services available. Through Coils, Cash and Culture, we're going to get a bit closer to the creatives and the entrepreneurs creating new paths in the industry. Black hair is business, so let's get into it. Today, we are joined by Lauren Haber, who is a former salon owner of Lilly's BlowDry and Makeup Lounge in Oakland, New Jersey. Lauren is going to share with us today her experience as a white salon owner trying to cater to the hair of clients with textured hair. Thanks for coming on the show today, Lauren.
Thanks, Taisha. It's fun to be here. I'm super excited.
Full disclosure for people listening, Lauren and I now actually work together full time. And so let's talk about your journey, Lauren, from the start and how you ended up running a salon.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about this. Like, how did I actually wind up doing this? Because it was a huge transition. I had been working in corporate America since 1999. I'm aging myself now, but it's okay. And I was desperate for a break. I needed to do something different. I had just come from like a super intense job, been traveling the world. All sounds super glamorous, but as anybody knows who's in corporate, it's not glamorous and it's exhausting. And so I said to my husband, like, I think I need a break. Like, I think I just need an actual break. Not thinking I was going to work at all for a little bit. And I was home for maybe 8 weeks. And I said, like, I can't do this. I don't know how to not do something. So he's like, well, why don't you open up your own business? We lived at the time in Rockland County, which is about 40 minutes north of Manhattan. And there was nothing out there. It was a very isolating community with very few amenities. I had been used to living in New York City where, you could go out and get your salad, get your hair blown out, get your makeup done, buy a pair of shoes, and be back in your office in an hour. And that wasn't the case anymore, right? I was living in the middle of the burbs and I really just didn't understand. So I said, I think I'm going to open up a hair salon. Now, P.S., all I know was that I loved hair, but I had never gone to beauty school. I had no experience other than as a child, I grew up with a single father who didn't know how to do hair.
Mm-hmm.
So from a super young age, I started learning how to do my own hair. So my journey was that I must have just like had a dream, woken up and said, like, there's nothing around me here that I want to go to, and I think that I could make this work.
Okay, so you left corporate America, needed a rest, and then decided to start a company.
Yeah, no one told me. How dumb. No one told me like being an entrepreneur was so much more difficult than working in a corporate job where at least you get your weekends, at least, right? Like this was 24/7. I just didn't realize it because the part of owning the business in the first phase of it is all glitz and glam. You go and get a loan or you have money and you get to pick out a space and you get to decorate it. And it's like, oh, this is going to be easy. Like people are just going to walk in and love me. And that was not at all how it happened. I mean, it was like everything that you think it's going to be, it's nothing like that. So I would just say to everyone thinking that, running your own business, I encourage it because I think it was the most insightful 7 years of my life. I've never learned more. I've never worked with more diverse people. I've never had to alter my management style more, but it was the hardest 7 years of my life.
Yeah. Noted. So 7 years, when did you open the salon?
So I opened the salon. It was at the end of, so I'm just keeping it straight. I think I opened in May of 2013. it took about 7 months to find space. And I actually, another rookie move, I gutted the place that I found. So now again, I didn't buy the location. I just rented out the space. So I hope the landlord is listening because he really got a deal. So I gutted this space. I made it beautiful. It used to be an old flower shop, and I put new floors in, and I built out salon stations. I built out the basement so that all the workers could have like a full kitchen. What was super important to me, and I think what I had learned in corporate, was that employee retention is everything, right? Like, people that work for you matter, and the happier they are, the less money it will cost me down the road. So I knew nothing about hair, but I knew how to treat people to keep them to stay working for me. Now, half of them, I didn't want them to stay working for me anyway, but I did know that if I built a place that was nice enough for people to come and work and have food for them, and have, my kitchen was always stocked. We always had, like, we would have our meetings down there, and I had an office down there, that it would hopefully encourage like longevity as far as, employee retention. I think the thing that I did in the 7-month period between opening my doors and the construction and all of that was that I went across the country to about 100 different salons from the West Coast to the
Oh,
East Coast.
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a journey. It was like something I said I was going to do. I was going to go to every BlowDry bar salon that I could go to in all different kinds of neighborhoods in, in all the way from Harlem in the city downtown. I went to Arizona, California, the middle of the country, into like Iowa, to kind of just see how people were getting their hair done. And I wrote down, I had a journal, probably 2 or 3 journals, filled with things I liked, things I didn't, people that were good, people that weren't, what made something like experiences good. So you can tell that my experience is in customer service. It was really important for me that when customers walked in, that it felt like home. So that's what I did in the 7-month period before I actually opened my doors.
Okay, wow. I think I wasn't expecting you to say you went to 100 salons across
Yeah,
America.
I did.
That's impressive. That's market research for sure. You talk about customer service. I know that's important to you and you have experience in that. And you mentioned you went to salons in Harlem, to maybe Arizona. Demographics are different. Their hair can be different. So when you came to your salon, truly, were you set up from that outset to cater for textured hair? Had you thought about that consciously yet before you began to have a diverse set of clients walking through the door?
So transparently, no, I did. I wasn't prepared. Um, the community that I had launched the business in was a primarily white community. Um, I put the salon uh, in a location that I knew a lot of people in, because I knew that like friends of friends would come. So I had a really big foundation of community there. What I didn't realize was that like salons are a place that people come to from all over. They come in for weddings and for funerals and for graduations. And so it was not a thought on my mind that I was going to be catering to all different types of women. I just thought it was going to be the local mom groups. And that was so not the case. So originally, when I hired my original staff, like the very first group of women that I hired, um, no, I wasn't prepared. I mean, that's the really short and sweet of it. I think I had very quickly learned, it wasn't a very long amount of time until I realized I had to make a shift.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting you mentioned the different reasons people get their hair done, because I do think you talk about hair and people, I think we even can have such a small view of like what it touches, but like to your point, people even get their hair done for funerals and that touches everyone. In terms of the problem you've described, even if you're in the US, depending on where you are, I can speak from my experience in the UK as well. Unless you're in New York City or you're in a big city, it's hard for people with black hair, textured hair. They've got to call people, do you do this hair? Some people and are about it. So it makes sense that you started at that point, to be honest. That's not new. And I'm glad we're having this conversation so other people can hear this and learn from it. So, like, going on the journey, you open the salon. What happened? When did you realize you have like a problem or a gap to solve?
Well, I was doing my first wedding. I think it was probably 3 months into opening. I don't think it was very long. I also thought that I would just open the doors and miraculously people would come, so that's another, like, I just thought it's so beautiful here, and, I did this big grand opening, and people were just gonna see it in the town, and the town did welcome me, but there was a lot of questions about, like, I don't even understand what this is because anyway, that's probably for a different day. But I had booked a wedding, which was really a nice revenue driver for us. Weddings meant money, and it meant quick money because it was like you have to get the bride and her team out the door within a certain period of time. And, we charge for it. We did hair and makeup. So in her wedding party, um, she had 2 or 3 women of color in her bridal party. Again, like, when I took everyone's name and information, it was like it didn't even cross my mind. And they walked in, and I thought to myself, "Shit." Like, um, because again,
Yeah.
transparently, and I don't know if this is on audio or people can see us or not, but, uh, I actually when I was young, I had very, very, very thick, curly, coarse hair that was very unmanageable. And my mom would send me to a Black woman's salon to get it straightened. And so I knew, like, as a human being, like, that not all hair is fine and easy to blow out. I knew it in my head, like, as a human being, I knew this because I had grown up with very thick curly hair that, like, we would go to the salon and these women would destroy my hair. Um, but when I was living it, I just, it was just such a wake up call. So listen, we made do on the day of that wedding, but I was mortified. Their hair came out horrible. Um, they were clearly unhappy. Um, and I did get a letter from one of the women that attended the wedding shortly thereafter, which was sort of a little bit of my wake-up call.
Okay, cool. I think there's a few things to unpack. I think let's start with the fact of your textured hair, right? The fact that your mum took you to a salon where Black women are going. I think, again, for people listening, I think I need to check this. I think it's either 75% or 65% of the planet have technically textured hair. So even if you're not Black, there's lots of people like yourself. I've got friends who are white who, honestly, they need the same level of attention that my textured hair needs. And so I think that's important to know. But it's funny that you had that experience, but again, probably didn't carry it through because, again, that's just how you're experiencing. You're thinking probably everyone can just do hair. At that point, when you're young, you're just like, I go to this place to get my hair done. And so I had a question for you because I'm not familiar with this. You had to hire people. What's your understanding of like the training that goes into the stylists themselves, right? Because it's one thing for you to own the salon and say, hey, can you do this? But it's also an opening that like there was a team of people trained who hadn't been trained in textured hair.
Well, this is like I think the foundation of the problem, Taisha. Seriously, I don't, not that I don't take accountability for having people in my salon who can manage any person who walks in the door, right? Like, I think that's every owner's responsibility to be able to handle any customer and accommodate, right? Like, I mean, I don't think it's handle, I think it's accommodate. Um, but the training in beauty school, if you look at, so depending on what state you live in, there's a set course that you have to adhere to. It's in New York or New Jersey, I think it's between 1,000 or 1,200 hours of school time, and I think only 10 or 20. Don't count. I mean, like, if anyone's, I could be wrong because it's been a long time. but I think it's only like 10 or 20% of that time is actually like on the floor working on actual people. The rest of the time they're working on mannequins. And those mannequins are all hair that looks the same. So every girl that's in now, again, could this have changed? Might this have changed? Potentially, yeah. So right, like I don't want to be thrown in hair prison, but I don't,
But it's
that's
not that long
why
ago. Like, you're only talking 10 years ago. Like, you're not talking
no.
30, 40 years ago. Like, that's still pretty recent because that's a whole decade of a generation that were trained to not be able to do everyone's hair.
It's totally true. It wasn't like, it wasn't long ago. Um, but I think as blow dry bars, particularly because listen, here's the difference. I think when it came to actual salons, like where women would get haircuts and get perms and like it's if you're a black woman, you're going to a black salon, right? You're not just going to walk into a white salon and expect them to know what to do with your hair. When it came to blow dry bars, which Allie Webb started with dry bar back in the day and everyone mirrored, right? You would even be surprised in dry bar what was happening. Like people of color were walking in and you would see what the black stylists were doing. They weren't even able to manage the hair. And a lot of it was about like they had time constraints, right? Like they had 30 minutes to do hair and that was it. And that's not how it works.
No,
Like
it's not how it works.
no. So I just think that like I think it is a fundamental problem that, from the beginning in training, women, men, whoever is they are not learning how to
Mhm.
deal with all different types of hair.
and
Point.
that and that's I think that's something that's so important because you touched on the fact that this doesn't just apply to hairstylists that are black, like not black. It also applies to those that follow that formal training. And it's funny you bring it up because we had a guest Sabrina, who was on, I think, like episode 4, and she talks about this. She's a black woman in the UK, and she talks about the fact when she was going through her training, there was no training. And so she had to take a second and be like, wait a minute, I can't not be able to do the textured hair that's on my head. And then she took her additional steps to learn that. And to your point, in terms of the services, I maybe think there's maybe one person I've been to that I think if they truly had to give me a blow dry in half an hour, they could do it. But I'm also like, you've got like 30 years experience, like, but to your point, there's also this contentious debate around like Afro hair, black hair, textured hair being called difficult. And it's like, to your point, it requires a different type of care and level of care. And everything being built is not catering to what that looks like. So they're both two very big things that you brought up that I think even now aren't solved for.
By the way, I also think, one of the things that I saw happening was that if your hair was quote unquote difficult, you were charged a different price, which I would never do. So for me, I did not have time constraints on this was sort of some of the after. I never did before, but I always said to me, it doesn't matter if someone's hair takes 45 minutes or an hour. Like we hoped that someone would say to us on the phone, we would ask them the length of their hair, their texture of their hair, like on the pre-call when they were calling to book the appointment, and just try and book the right amount of time for the person versus 30 minutes in. It's like your handle time is 30 minutes. If you're over that, you're getting docked pay. Like AKA difficult should not mean more expensive, right? And a lot of salons will charge more for the harder your hair is. Now, again, time is money. I sort of understand it, but I really feel
Time is money.
but it's not right. It's not.
Yeah, time is money, but it should still be reasonable because you should be trained in it. So I completely could understand someone saying, Taisha, your hair is going to take an hour longer, so it's going to cost a certain amount. When it takes longer because you can't blow dry because you're not used to the texture, that's a different, because I've had both experiences where I'm like, I get what I'm paying for. And sometimes I'm like, no, you just don't know what you're doing to blow dry my hair.
Exactly.
And so you make a good point, and I guess it is case by case. So you have this wedding, you receive this letter. What do you do next? What steps did you take to build a more inclusively trained team that, to be fair, has also probably been let down by a system, and to create an environment where that wouldn't happen necessarily again?
Yeah. So a couple of things happened. One, I had a ton of attrition in my first year with stylists. I didn't know what to look for. I thought if they were cute and perky, that made them a good hairdresser. Not true.
This kind of happens, Lauren, when you know nothing about hair and you decide to open a salon on your
Yes,
break.
yes, there's a learning curve that no one told me about. And it's funny, I don't, again, like I was so by the books. Everyone that started went on payroll right away. And finally, the guy that ran my payroll from like ADP said to me, and if he's listening, he'd probably get in trouble, but he said, Lauren, stop giving me their W-2s until you know that they're going to last, because he was putting them into the system quicker than they were saying. But what I did do was, one, I hired a company called Coif Professional, which I think is no longer. And I actually, when I was doing the research for our conversation, I went to go look her up. And I think COVID probably, it wiped out so much of the salon industry because salons were closed for so long. But I did hire a company to come in and do professional training with her and her staff, who were a diverse group of women who came in, and everyone had to bring in models of all. So if you look, I was looking at the call sheet from the 2 days that we had that training, and it was really intense. I mean, the girls that were working for me, I mean, they weren't making a lot of money, so, but they had to bring in 4 models over the 2 days. And of those 4 models, 3 of them had to have different types of hair, super textured hair, Dominican hair, like anything that wasn't just like white, easy hair to blow dry. By the way, some of them were so bad they weren't even blow drying white hair well. Do you know what I mean? Which was
Yeah. And when you say easy, again, for everyone listening, we mean like, I don't know, because you can't see us, but we mean perceived easy.
Perceived in that it's fine. It's, maybe medium length. It's not a ton of hair, right? Like easy is my hair at my age now, perception, right? But I can tell the minute I go to get a blow dry, Taisha, I'm like, nope, don't do it. I'm leaving. I'm like, don't do it. So yeah, so I had, her name was Marianne. I had her come in and we did this 2-day training. And I think it really sort of shed some light on all of us that, we can't know who's going to walk in the door, but what we can do, it's just like you can only control your own feelings, right? Like we can only control
what
now,
you can
maybe
control.
it's 1 in every 50 people that walk in the door in my salon, but that one person should not be made to feel different. So she did a really nice job. It was very expensive for me to do it, and it was worth every penny. But the other thing that honestly really started to happen over the progression of a couple of years was that my staff overall just became much more diverse. Like I realized when I had initially hired, I was hiring the same person over and over and again. And that was my bad, right? Like I didn't know what I didn't know. My makeup artist, the first person that I hired, she was just like, had worked at, I don't know, maybe Makeup Forever or whatever it was. And the second person I hired was a Broadway makeup artist. She had worked on all different kinds of people. Like, I didn't even have makeup in the salon at the time for darker skin. Like, how bad of me, right? Like, I didn't even think about it. Like, the shades I had were the light to medium shades, but we didn't have shades of foundation that were darker. So, like, everything started to shift because there was no way I was going to live through that experience again where someone, called and felt bad. And I felt horrible myself. I did, of course, reach out to that woman, and we had a very nice relationship through the years. She lived semi-locally. She came down from the Bronx to get her hair done. I hired this girl, Elaine, and it turned out really well, but it was a very big turning point.
Okay. And before we get to I know we're going to talk about Elaine a bit more, but can you share roughly what was the sentiment in the letter you received? Because I think I will say this now, like I've had great experiences. I've also been to salons where it's very clear they've been in your position where they're just especially when I lived in the north of England. I lived in a place called Leeds, which is like not the most diverse. And so I went to a salon and they didn't know what they were doing. And I never gave the feedback. I remember just being like, I'm just never going to come back. But I would love to know if you're able to share what was the tone of that letter in general, and how did that land with you? We know it landed because it drove change, but like, what was the immediate kind of thinking?
Yeah. Listen, I knew when she left, like I'm pretty perceptive that
Yeah, thanks. It's not good.
either it was going to be a phone call asking for her money back, which I think I gave it to her anyway. I don't know if I did it right immediately or waited for the letter. I don't, it wasn't very much like me, probably why I wasn't always such a great business owner, because I wasn't driven by money, right? Like that was not my intention of um, running the salon and owning the salon. But the letter was basically like, you walk into your salon and it's beautiful and how nice that you have this place, but basically you only can cater to one type of person and you let me walk out of here looking horrible. And I was embarrassed and I had to go home and redo my hair and redo my makeup. And you should really think about like what you're doing over there. And it was harsh. And I remember feeling, I don't know if like, was I mad? I don't think so. I think I empathized probably. Maybe I was mad at myself, but that was the basic of the letter. And yeah, luckily for me, it was me and not someone else. I think there were a lot of other salons in town that probably would have had different reactions.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to touch on this specifically is because this whole podcast about the future, and there's a lot of contentious topics, not even contentious, they're just a lot of important topics still when we talk about hair. And I just want for everyone listening to understand that we're talking about the future and building that. And so going through this and hearing your story and how that drove change is like what we're trying to get out of this conversation. And so you trained the team. What was next? You continued to run the salon. You got a more diverse team. I know you ended up eventually shutting shop nearly a decade later. So what did you do next when you were trying to close the business?
Yep. So I had talked to one of my managers at the salon and talked to her about potentially owning the business and was she interested, and I'd like to share the books with her and see if she was interested in it, and she quickly said I'm really interested in it. And it was a very lengthy process because it wasn't like, okay, here you go. I mean, selling a business, closing your doors, what you wind up seeing is that a lot of businesses just close their doors versus trying to sell, because selling is like, you have to show that you've been netting revenue. You have to be really, I mean, it's not just some simple transaction. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of due diligence that both of us have to do in order to really make sure, one, is this the right thing for me? Because quite honestly, for me, it was a tax write-off, right? Like, so there were things that were good for me too. So we really had to make sure that it was right for both of us. So I ultimately wound up selling the salon to her. But unfortunately, what happened during the process was that because she didn't make that much money on the books, and she didn't have credit because she was a young girl, she couldn't get a loan. She could not get a loan to buy the business, and it was going to be sort of the deal breaker because I wanted her to have the business. I thought, I think she's the right salon owner for this. My customers absolutely adored her. I knew that she would keep sort of the bones of Lilly's alive, whether or not she changed the name, which she ultimately wound up doing and making it her own, all good, right? Like none of that even bothered me. But the loan part was the problem. And quite
And was
honestly,
she, do you mind me asking, I'm curious, was she a person of color?
she was.
Okay. I think that's quite interesting because I'm just like, you started not even being able to like catered to textured hair, right? Without even realizing that you had a gap. And then you've fast forward to getting rid of the business or selling the business, you're handing over ownership to someone who has a completely different heritage to you, which is quite full circle.
It was full circle. I had always said to my husband, like, I think if anything, if I did this for anything, it was to give someone an opportunity that wouldn't have had the opportunity. Like, I don't know if that was really what the whole 7 years was about. Like, you kind of look back and go, like, I made some interesting friends. Like, I still talk to so many people that were my clients that were, I see like my clients' kids going to college and they were like, going to sixth grade dance. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. But I did sell it to her and we wound up actually giving her the loan. So, because she couldn't get financing through a bank, my husband and I decided that one, we were ready enough to like do this. And I really trusted that she was going to make this work. So we put together a formal agreement. I funded her the money, to purchase the loan. Basically, she didn't have to transact any money. Actually, I want to take that back and say she did give me a percentage down of cash that she had saved. So it wasn't like there was zero from her side. She did give me a percentage of the money. It was small. It was like 10 or 20%. That was good enough for me. And it was a payoff over 4 years, which I thought, again, super risky. Because in our contract, it stated that if she didn't pay it back, that I could resume ownership of Lilly. Let me tell you what I didn't want to happen. I did not want to resume ownership. And she paid that bill every single month on time. There were times she paid 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Like, there was not a month that I had to reach out to her and be like, hey, it was just, she was amazing. And P.S. kudos to her. I sold her the salon in January of 2020. And as we all know what happened in March of 2020, she had to close that salon for 6 months. So there was a very high likelihood that Michael and I were never getting our money back. And she did not ever miss a month.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think that's a nice segue to kind of end the formal interview, formal conversation. I appreciate you actually really sharing your story. For folks listening, one thing Laura and I discussed on the call is how do we have a respectful conversation, because she is a white woman and may say something that, offends or triggers something. And I just want to remind everyone that's listening, we're talking about the future. We're all on this journey. And sometimes you're going to do something that's wrong, or you don't know something and you're going to learn. And I just want us to continue to have that attitude when it comes to black hair and textured hair. Obviously there's limits, but I think this is a very important conversation. I think it takes an element of vulnerability to step into being like, yeah, I'll tell you how I messed up. So I appreciate that. And I hope anyone listening who does run a salon maybe you're still trying to fill that gap can take some inspo from how you ended up kind of even handing over the business.
I think all of it's learning, right? Like, if you're not learning, you're not
growing,
moving, growing, right? Like, every day, even at our work here, right? Like, I'm constantly evolving. So I think the salon was a true experience. I mean, I have never met a wilder bunch of people in my life. And it made me a better manager in corporate America because, and actually there's a few people that work for me where we work today that have worked for me throughout the years and have said like, wow, Lauren, you're a lot different than you were years ago, because there are so many different kinds of people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's got a story. Everyone has family stuff and things going on. And in corporate, it's a little bit cut and dry, not as much anymore, right? Where it's like you come to work and your personal stuff is at the door. And in the salon, it wasn't like that. It was, you have to really adjust your management style to all different kinds of people. And so it made me a better manager now too. So I'm so grateful for the experience. I know I didn't do everything right. There are lots of things I wish I could go back and do differently, but I think it ended up the way it should have.
I think you made right though, right? Like, I think you improved things, and I think that's the goal. Before we wrap up, every guest I ask quick fire questions. There's 5 questions. They're a surprise. And you can just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
I wasn't scared for an hour, but now I'm scared.
First question. What advice do you have for other salon owners who are looking to make sure they can cater to textured hair?
Yeah, I mean, listen, read, learn. There's so much content available right now that wasn't available to me. Like even when you go on TikTok or you go, I mean, there are so many places to learn about different cultures, different hair types, that I don't think there's any excuses anymore. I don't think there can be excuses anymore for not knowing how to do, if you own a business, how to cater to every single person that walks in your door. So I would just say, like, take the time, hire diverse staff, educate yourself. You should know, like, you should be in the weeds yourself and learn. You should know how to do things. And there's a lot of people who can help you. So if you have to, pay for training and resources and educate yourselves.
Okay. What's the worst hairstyle you ever had in your life?
Oh my gosh. Well, in fourth grade, I didn't know any better. I think this is a very common story amongst girls. I didn't realize that bangs had to grow out. So my mother had cut bangs for me and I hated them. And so I just took a scissor and I cut them off. And yeah, I can share a picture after, but that's not how it worked. And I learned very quickly that like cutting them was a really, really bad idea. So that was an interesting phase.
Okay. Third question. You're stuck on a desert island. I have to drop one hair product or tool off. You don't know when you're getting off the island's hot. What hair product or tool would you like me to drop off for your hair?
So I'm trying to not blow dry my hair as much anymore. I think it's just like I've been wearing my hair more natural lately. So I just want like some kind of, I like Orbe. That's the product I go for.
Okay.
It's called like Royal Blowout. And so anything with like a little bit of oil and stuff so that I could just wear a ponytail for me right now is what I'm going for. Half the time I get on calls at work, I'm like, oh, I realize I haven't blown out my hair. But for me, that's what I'm trying to do. So I would just want one nice kind of oily product to put my hair in a slick back ponytail.
Okay, cool. Music is a big part of getting your hair done and the experience. What song do you have on repeat at the moment?
Oh gosh, I was just looking at this. I mean, don't kill me. Okay, so I have Kelly Clarkson on. I know I'm so judged for her, but it's like I love her. I have her new album on repeat.
Okay.
And one quick funny story about Kelly Clarkson is that I did work at a music company before this music company, and my first date with my now husband was that he flew me to Houston to go to a Kelly Clarkson concert. I got to go backstage and meet her. And I don't know if it was really loud in there or what was going on, but she said, "Oh, nice to meet you." And she said, "What's your name?" And I thought she said, like, because we were backstage, I thought she said, like, "Oh, what company did you come from?" So I said, "Oh, I came from Sirius XM Radio." And she called me Sirius XM. She didn't realize like that was, she was like, "Oh, hi, Sirius." So anyway, I still love her, even though she didn't understand that my name was Lauren and I was working there. But I have her on repeat right now. And also I mean, it's not a song, but I have Pink on repeat because I'm going to her concert on August 3rd. So
okay, cool. I'm making a playlist at the end of the season with everyone's artist and song.
I know I'll have to give you the specific song because I'm bad with songs.
That's okay. I'll pick a banger from Kelly Clarkson.
Okay, perfect.
And then to end on a positive note, what's one thing you're grateful for right now?
Oh, everything. I'm grateful that my friends and family are healthy. I'm grateful that I have an amazing job. I'm grateful that I get to do fun things like this with my coworkers who I really adore. And I'm just grateful that, like as you get older, the things you're grateful for are much less monetary and much more like your health and, just sort of having a roof over your head when you see what's going on around the world. I think it's just the small things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your experience as a former salon owner. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Take care. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow us to find out when the next episode is out. And if you really, really enjoyed this conversation, maybe send a link to a friend. And if you really, really, really enjoyed this conversation, head to coilscashculture.com to sign up to our mailing list today. Stay well, keep smiling.